Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of RegAlytics, with your update on this week's 27,857 regulatory alerts. The regulator of the week is the Securities and Exchange Commission for dropping their case against Coinbase. Amazing backstory here, but for me to go through all of the regulatory hurdles that Coinbase has gone through would take longer than this entire episode. But essentially, Coinbase registered for an IPO with the SEC to go public on a stock exchange in 2021. Coinbase is itself a crypto exchange. Crypto? Well, what is crypto? I mean, so many things. It can be a currency in some cases. It can be the representation of assets, which may sometimes include securities, but not always. But whatever. In 2023, 2 years after it became public for its very clearly open purpose of being a crypto exchange, the SEC sued it for operating an unregistered securities exchange. I'm not even going to get into the merits of this, but this week, the SEC dropped its charges with prejudice, which means it can never be brought up again. It does say, however, in the stipulation agreement that it doesn't stop the SEC from bringing similar charges against other crypto exchanges. The topic of the week is past bills. So every year, our peak season is typically February. This is because all of the state legislatures and Congress kick off the year and get started rolling out all the bill proposals. On average, about 250,000 bills are proposed every year in the United States, and about 25% of them pass. And then it gets going through the process. You know, it goes to committee, there's a hearing, it passes the Senate, fails the House, and is revised, and so on and so forth until it's ultimately signed by the governor. And there are, on average, about 50 alerts per bill. So if you do the math on that, that's over 10 million alerts a year. So what RegAlytics does is you will only see a bill 3 times. First, when it comes out, so it's on your radar. Again, when there's a hearing or opportunity for public comment. And then finally, when it's signed by the governor. So in this case, we are starting to see more and more bills moving into the signature process. And in fact, there were over 200 bills passed in America in the last 7 days. Over 500 in the last 30 days, and over 1,000 in the last 90 days. So what caught my eye this week? Well, Arkansas banned the sale of dead human bodies. Wonder what caused that to have to become a law in Arkansas. Idaho is offering a tax credit where folks can spend money on non-public schools. This seems to be becoming more common. Iowa created rules and definitions for gender and biological sex, which makes an interesting point that you could go on a drive from one side of the United States to the other, and your gender may change along the way, depending upon the different rules. Utah, possibly in anticipation of the abolishment of federal OSHA, has increased the penalties for employers who violate Utah's equivalent rules on occupational health and safety. New York has passed laws on IVF and surrogacy, where a woman gives birth to a child on behalf of another. It establishes that the intended parents will be recognized as the sole legal parents through the surrogacy agreement, while the surrogate and donors will have no parental rights. Meanwhile, in South Dakota, paternity can be established after the age of 18 based on genetic test results, and the legislation would enable adults to seek legal recognition of paternity, which could have implications for inheritance rights, medical history access, and familial relationships. Key word there, I think, being inheritance. So if you are a father of an illegitimate child and you don't want them to come after your assets, might I suggest that you live in a state other than South Dakota? And since we're on IVF, Trump did put out an executive order on IVF. All he's asking for are policy recommendations to bring the cost down. And since we are on Trump, there was a really big executive order on copper. And the Senate has proposed some rules on critical minerals to be watching for if you're in that space. There is also an executive order on how the DOGE process is going to impact agencies' budgets. So if you are depending on federal funding, you will want to read that one. And last but not least, PayPal got a New York Department of Financial Services fine for cybersecurity violations. In 2022, some unmasked consumer information, including social security numbers, were exposed, and PayPal failed to implement the necessary policies and procedures. So they were fined $2 million. And don't you ever forget it, but regulators need to make money too. And that's it this week for RegAlytics. We have the global supply chain of the world's regulatory alerts in one very easy to use place. If you need a solution for anything related to regulation, give us a call.